Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to another Q&A for the Green Film Festival of San Francisco 2022. I'm Jason Wolos, one of the programmers here at SF Indie Fest. Today we are having the Q&A for the program Full Circle, and lucky enough to have two filmmakers here with us. Maybe another one joining in right now. I'm going to admit them. Thanks for joining us, Nicholas. You're just caught us at the start. But hey, real quick, if filmmakers, you can just introduce yourself, the film you're involved with, and where you're calling in from. Jason, you're first on my screen. I'll have you start.
Sure. My name's Jason Whalen. My film is called Loon, and I'm calling in from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Right on. Good to have you here. Thank you. Yuri, is that how you pronounce your name?
That's right. Hey, I'm Yuri Holzer. I live vicariously in Florida and in the Czech Republic, mostly in Florida. That's my official, place and job. But I'm from Europe originally, and that's where I'm trying to promote environmental messages.
And your film is The Value of a Forest.
That's correct.
Yes. And hey, Nicholas, thanks for joining in. Good to have you here. Introduce yourself, your film, and where you're calling from.
Hi, my name is Nick. I just go by Nick, and I'm calling in from Thousand Oaks, California, and my film is Full Circle.
Full Circle, right, which happens to be the title of this short program right here. Let me get your notes up front. Well, real quick, let's start off with the icebreaker question. And Nicholas, since I'm on you, how'd your film come to be? What was the inspiration, the start of your movie?
So last year, I had the opportunity to work pretty closely with rangers in the Black Forest National Park. And basically, my film was documenting my year there working with them. And the title is called Full Circle because it's basically just the change of the seasons, change of the kind of the environment, and basically the coming from summer, going through all the seasons, and then coming back through summer, basically. And the whole goal was to kind of show the kind of natural balance of the life cycle there in the Black Forest National Park, and to document how the rangers are working with the environment, with the people, basically to protect this habitat.
Right on. And I may have missed this. Why were you there? Did you do a year camping there? A year survival program?
I graduated high school in 2020, and I decided to take a gap year, and I had the opportunity to basically go and work as a forest ranger in the Black Forest National Park. Yeah, as my gap year program.
Wow, fantastic. And Yuri, how about you? What was the initiation of your film? I know you're a doctor. Were you studying the habitat?
I have 2 minute letters in front of my name. Yeah. I started my adult life in Czechia, and I started just across the border from Nick's Black Forest. I started in a Czech national park. It's called Šumava, which is really one, or used to be one, contiguous dark green belt across Europe since the last ice age. And since that time, we chopped it up into little pieces and turned it into a timber production monocultures. And after having spent, a decade studying the interactions between forest and climate and bugs and people, I somehow figured out why we're having problems with all this tree mortality, and the biggest mortality we've ever seen in the history of humans right now in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's not that nature has turned against us, it's that we've screwed a couple of things up, and that needs to be documented.
Yeah, yeah, we screwed a couple things up. Yes. Well, hopefully we're gonna make changes soon. And Jason, introduce us how you got your start with your film, your project, Loon.
Absolutely. So we were hired by the Nature Conservancy to tell the story of a land acquisition project that they had going on in northern Minnesota, in the Boundary Waters area, right just off the coast of Lake Superior. Amazing area. And it was a story about, the person who previously owned the land and was selling it to the Nature Conservancy at an extremely discounted rate. So, not quite donated, but he was able to transfer it for conservation. So we made the film for the gig that we were hired to do, and we just met the the guy. Mike Freed is his name, but he goes by Loon, and almost instantly knew he was a character. Just, you know, doing an amazing thing, but just a big personality and a wealth of knowledge and a great perspective for conservation. So Loon is the festival cut, the director's cut, expanded from the 4-minute version to a 10-minute version, and letting his personality play out and his personal story. Dive a little deeper into who he is and why he sort of did this heroic thing for conservation in Minnesota.
Yeah, wonderful films, all wonderful films. Fantastic individual, and I think I can connect. I remember Loon talked about land fragmentation, land partitioning, and Yuri, you just kind of brought that up too. You were, you know, the forest used to be one big green belt, dark green belt, and man is chopping it up. Talk a little bit about that, Jason. Loon basically is preventing that, or did prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's at a relatively small scale, but he owned 2,000 acres to his name as just one individual, and it was adjacent to the Superior National Forest, one of the only public land holdings within the national forest. So in his own words in the film, he's like, I could have made money by selling it off parcel by parcel, and someone could have built a road in here and a cabin in here. But that's land fragmentation, and he knows that that's something that he does not want to see with this place he loves so much. So he took a hit financially to make sure that land fragmentation didn't happen in this corner of the world that he grew up in and cared so much for. So he actually bought the land after it was logged off when it wasn't much value. I don't know, 70 years ago or something like that, or 60, 50 years ago, and held on to it until it all grew back and was a super high value piece of, you know, ecological property. And so he just had enough perspective to know what was valuable in the bigger picture. And it's not just about him and what he could have got from his investment. It was what he in the film, he calls it his gift to the people of Minnesota. And so it's just awesome to see someone with that sort of selfless attitude and perspective about what's important to the greater good.
Yeah. And then Yuri, you know, I think in your film there's a statement to some effect where it's like, you know, the beetles, our bark beetles are basically, they're a symptom of other things that are going on. Is like fragmentation one of those things? You want to talk about fragmentation, or just how like it's almost like
they're a result of many things, right? I'll just quickly summarize what our film is about. Before I do that, I need to say it's our film. I'm one little guy of the group of 3, and the really 2 awesome filmmakers that are, you know, the workhorses of this little production. Jonas Stenstrom and Rob Nelson couldn't be here, but those are really the guys who made it art rather than just a scientific narrative.
right.
So to answer your question, it's interesting how we have this understanding that nature lives somewhere outside of the human world, that we can sort of close it in these conservation reservations, and it doesn't, and then there's the human world. But you know, if you live in Europe, and Nick has seen it, there are too many people for that perspective. We have to learn how to live nature and people together in the same spot. There is no other place. There's no real wilderness in Europe. That's a, you know, fantasy from medieval age fairy tales. And so what's happening is this pressure on land, and we have to figure out what these pressures are and how to lessen them so that the whole thing doesn't collapse. What we have seen in Europe over the past 10, 20 years is a collapse. It's just what could have been predicted. And, you know, now that like people are seeing it, it's like, oh, duh, obviously it's going to happen. You know, 20 years ago, when scientists predicted this, it was like, oh, this is nonsense. You know, the trees have always been growing here. They're always going to be growing here. Well, not so much, really. If you chop up the landscape into little pieces, and each piece is a homogeneous, same age, densely packed plantation, those are really susceptible to all kinds of things, starting from dry summers, warm winters, bugs, that these insects have been there for 2 million years. They have never liquidated a forest like this.
All
So
right.
that's not new. What's
Right.
new is that the forest looks different. And turns out what our narrative tries to say is that this is not a forest. This is a plantation. In Europe, we have gotten used to these standing rows, of timber as a forest, but that's not really what it was supposed to be. And I wonder if Nick has seen the same in Germany. I suspect so, that, now that the weather is warmer and drier, these plantations just aren't standing up anymore. And so we have to diversify these woods.
And it's also interesting how you said in your movie too, like, when they planted those forests 50, 60, 100 years ago, because that's how long it takes for the Norwood pine to grow.
Right.
They didn't even have climate change, conservation, those thoughts, those topics weren't even known.
The mindset was the cognitive landscape of people was entirely different. It was still about conquering nature. Now we're trying to paddle back and say, stop. That's not right. You have to
And
live with it.
Nicholas, what did you discover making your film, working with the park rangers? Are they aware of, the current state of things?
So it's actually so interesting to hear your side of the story, because what you're talking about has so much to do, and it's such a relevant topic right now for the Black Forest National Park. The whole Black Forest is basically a monoculture, and it's basically consists of these spruce trees that are about the same age, 50 to 70 years old, which are harvested pretty young, even in they're teenage trees basically. And it is so unnatural to have that kind of life cycle. And so the goal of the national park and what the rangers are doing is to basically try and let nature do its thing. And there's pretty strict borders in the national park. And outside of the borders, there's still this monoculture, but inside, we're trying to basically let these bark beetles do their work and take down all these spruce trees and create more of a biodiversity in terms of the trees that exist there. And and also this habitat fragmentation. The national park is split into two sectors. There's a north and a south side. And the goal of this film is actually to basically promote the national park in a way, and promote this conservancy, and basically trying to join those two sides of the national park together.
Fantastic. What were some of the kind of challenges you guys encountered making these movies? Were there any challenges?
That was a funny question.
Well, sometimes it's accessibility, sometimes it's the elements, with different environmental films.
What was probably the biggest challenge was there are challenges with money, weather, transport, COVID, all that kind of stuff. But probably the biggest one was what I think Jason has already figured out with this film, which is that, I was going to make a film about nature, but my comrades in crime, Rob and Jonas, because they're seasoned filmmakers, they understood it has to be about people. And so it took us a year to rehash the original ideas and understand that it cannot be just about the beetles and the trees and the weather. That's interesting. That's mostly interesting to me, the scientist, but folks aren't going to understand that if it's not a story about folks. And so I am looking forward to seeing Jason's film about a person who figured this out a long time ago.
I recommend you watch it. It's really good. Jason, challenges?
It's this was a 3-day shoot. It's hard to have challenges when your job is it felt like a awesome vacation. We spent most of it on a canoe. We were soaking in the wisdom of Loon, who is just a really awesome guy to be around for a couple days. We had some weather, but the lightning from the storm made it into the cut and actually made it. It's good. We got rained out and didn't get one scene we wanted to shoot, but we got that piece of texture that just was an awesome thing that happened. So and I know challenges are just a part of filmmaking, but this one was just a pleasure through and through, because it was just one of those gigs that you're always going to remember. It's someone you meet, and we still text with Loon, you know, sending
Wow.
photos and whatnot. And so I guess this is a rare exception where like things went smoothly, and for the job we were hired to do, and it just made it so that we had so much content that
Yeah.
the piece was
You
able to expand.
you are a rare
Mhm.
exception, so I don't want to hear it anymore. It's way too
Right.
easy for you. I want to hear drama. No, but probably your challenge was editing all the beautiful footage. All these
Yeah.
films have beautiful footage. Um, so that was probably your biggest challenge, right?
I mean, you had to boil it down and pick and choose the shots. But once we expanded it into, you know, twice the length of our intended shoot, then we were kind of scraping the edge of the sides of what we had. And so it just is a beautiful landscape. So that helped. And, you know, I think something that was interesting is, you know, when we sit down, we usually know what we're trying to say, and we guide our interview to do that. And Loon is just a personality who, he dictated the interview and said what he wanted to say, and it got us to a place that we weren't expecting, and deeper into his story that we didn't even know existed. And so I don't know if that's a challenge. Our interview went extremely long, and it just gave us the fuel to do something like a festival cut.
Right.
And we learned so much from that process. You know, we don't know
Well, hold
everything
off. I'll
going
ask
into
that
it.
question next. I want to ask you guys that question too. So hold off.
Sure.
But Nicholas, I imagine yours also seemed like normal challenges because you were there and had a year. It wasn't like you're on a time crunch, but maybe I'm wrong.
Actually, I had a similar problem to Jason. It's just too much footage. I basically ended the year with probably over 3,000, maybe more clips that I had to basically condense into almost 5 minutes. And basically, I had my camera with me almost all the time I was doing work in the national park. So yeah, basically just condensing was a pretty big challenge for me. And also telling a story without any speech. I wanted to basically let nature kind of speak for itself, and I didn't want any speech really of people in there. And yeah, basically telling a story through just the visuals was pretty challenging for me. And I had to kind of re-edit quite a few times and kind of pick and choose like what works well. And I had to drop some clips that I really wish were in the film, but in the end, I think it turned out really well. And
It sure did. It sure did.
thank
Yeah,
you.
Yuri's answer to that question was the most normal for filmmakers. Everything's hard in filmmaking. Jason, so you prompted my next question. What did you guys learn? Each of you, I'll check out each of your answers. How are you different after making this movie? What did you learn? How did you change?
Yeah, this just was an exercise of searching for how to put humanity into our environmental stories. And usually there's a passion-based story, but with Loon, you know, he's grappling with his own mortality and knowing, you know, he has a line saying, "This, you never know when your last canoe ride is going to be. You got to make the most of it." And so he's the reason he donated this land at this time is he's like, I can't be around forever, and I am coming to terms with that as a person. And that's just powerful stuff that makes you feel something. And not a lot of our work gets there, and this one got there organically. We weren't trying to pull it out. And I think that's the biggest thing we learned from it, is like, why did this resonate with so many people? Is because it brought in some really human emotions and thoughts that you know, make you feel something. And so
And
that's great.
he's just such a generous human being doing good for the planet, as opposed to I won't name names, but some of these billionaires that are just trying to, you know, boost their ego. Anyways, I digress. Yuri, what did you learn? How have you changed?
I was a year and a half of learning. I think the most important lesson that changed my perspective on everything was pretty much what Jason was saying, that, you know, I was envisioning doing a David Attenborough style film, beauty shots, you know, beautiful music, immersed in nature, you know, and it turned out to be completely different. It turned out that what we really have to talk about is the values. and we put it in the name of our film. I should say Jonas did, because that's what we want to say. That was the ultimate thing that we learned, is that if we don't turn this green stuff around into human values, it's not going to survive. There's like, you know, bullshit values falling on us left and right from all the media, neighbors, everything, commerce, but they don't really matter as much as, you know, this stuff like air and water. And so we have to make them a value. And so that's why I love the, you know, the Loon, for example, because that person, there's no more questioning on searching anything. That's just the value. That's why he did it. It was
that is so true. I mean, we need to start talking and thinking that way. I mean, that's what's prohibiting, you know, a lot of the machinery, the mechanism of saving the planet is because they value the wrong things, right? That's a very good point. You got me brainstorming about other topics and themes. Actually, a sub theme of this whole program, this group of short films, could be, you know, value, something to do with value, the value of our environment. And Nicholas, I mean, your film kind of captures that too. It's just like the beauty. It's almost like the value is the joy of experiencing wildlife through your picture.
Yeah, totally. And I just wanted to show kind of the beauty of what can happen when you basically just let nature do its thing. And I'm so grateful that I was able to have this experience, because I learned basically everything that there is to know about the Black Forest and that ecosystem. And every shot has a story behind it for me. So I was with rangers who were telling me stories about, you know, the forest 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. And yeah, just there was so much learning behind this film for me. And especially,
did you change it all, do you think?
I'd say, yeah. My parents definitely say I did too. So
your parents say you did?
Yeah, they say I changed after the year.
Do they notice a difference in you, like, for some reason?
I mean, it was the first time I was kind of out of the house, so living on my own. That was a new experience for me. And coming back here, my life was completely different, and I saw the world a little bit differently, but in a very good way. And I feel like I had this experience that I'm just going to carry with me the rest of my life. And just I'm so grateful to have had it.
Yeah. Yeah, you could see the value of, you know, at least the Black Forest, if not the planet around you. Jason, I know you're pressed for time here. What do you hope audiences take away from your movie?
That's a great question. It's a little bit what you're taking away from this conversation. Things have value in it that you don't recognize on the surface until you have the perspective and the depth of connection to get you there. And so people like Loon, who have been on this planet for 85 years and have seen and felt things and have these deep connections, he has reached the conclusion to do the right thing. And the more stories we learn and the more people we learn from that have that perspective, the more we can figure out what's the right thing to do with the
and I'm going to just stay on you a couple more minutes because I know you're signing off here, and I'll keep talking to the other guys. But what's the current status of what's this area called?
It's the let's see, it's the North Shore of Minnesota. And so there's some protected areas, the Superior National Forest and the Boundary Waters Canoe and Recreation Area. These are beloved places for lots of people. Loon's property was right in the heart of that, and it was privately owned. And so he connected a lot of those areas too. So well protected and well beloved, and worth visiting if you're in the area.
Now he just is enjoying it, his preservation, his conservancy up in that area. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful film, and everybody should see it. And then Yuri, Yuri.
I'm going to sign off.
Okay, good to see you. Thank you so much,
everyone.
Yuri. What do you hope people get from your movie? Take away from your movie?
I don't know if Nick is signing off or not. I don't see him anymore. But I was just gonna follow up, if you don't mind, quickly on with a little nerdy note on what Nick said, which is, and it's also what we should take away from the movie. It's not the, you know, the dew and the butterfly and that it has a value. It of course does. But what Nick said is that what really has value is our interaction with it. is our own personal experience. And there is actually research showing that if you kick out a young punk out for a week, it really does change their lives. And there is some circuitry in our brains that needs that solitude. And Nick did that for a year. So no wonder it changes person's lives. And that's what I want people to take away. This is not some periphery of our existence, you know, this green out there. We need this to be people.
Yeah.
It changes our lives.
Yeah, it's so true. Being out in nature affects us, and we are what surrounds us, right? And if we're always around cement and noise, whatever.
Yeah.
Nicholas, how about you? Is there takeaways you hope people gain from your movie?
I'm just hoping that people will appreciate this beautiful ecosystem of the Black Forest. I mean, I just can't say it enough how incredible this ecosystem is when you really just even look at the smaller details. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. And totally, I agree with what Yuri said, is that, I mean, we originally come from nature, and when we go back to it, it's meaningful to us in a lot of ways. So
very true, very true. So just a couple more questions. Maybe a dry question right now. What's next for the films? What are you guys doing next?
So we're sticking it in front of a face of everyone who either owns land, forested land, or who has decision-making power in Europe. And like, we're working with policymakers in the Czech Republic to make sure that the new forestry legislation is more liberalized. It's not just about standing timber. And a piece of art like this is really helpful. You don't have to explain things to folks. You just send them a link. They watch it in the evening, and the next morning there are different people, and it's much easier to discuss.
You're making really good points. So true. So true. You're making really good points. That's why your films are so important. Environmental films are so important. I think for some reason this gets to people. This connects. They listen more through the media, if you will. And it's very important that your films exist and were made. Nicholas, how about you? What's next for your films or you?
What's next for the film? I'm hoping to basically just get it out there as much as I can, and just show this habitat. And I'm hoping that the national park is going to, they basically just built a new national park center, and I'm hoping that they're gonna integrate that film into this center and show it to the public when they come and visit the national park, just for them to get an idea of what you can really experience there.
Yeah, fantastic. It's excellent. It's good enough to do that. And that made me forget my last question. What do we need to do? What's your advice? Actually, what's your advice to humans as to environmental filmmakers? Or what's your advice to filmmakers as environmental filmmakers? As a filmmaker, your movies are beautiful and well made, and I'm impressed. And then also as a person that cares about our planet and our environment, it makes me more attentive. What's some advice you would give for either of those type of people? Nicholas?
I'd say some of the biggest advice that, I mean, I've learned myself through making this film is take the time to understand the meaning behind the shots and the meaning behind what you are filming. And that can be scientific, that could be, you know, the story of the landscape or the people that were there. Just take the time to kind of, understand where you're filming.
Got it. And then I need kind of advice for, you know, how that experience changed you, for me or for a person, like get out in nature more, or go hiking.
I think, I mean, let's see. I mean, John Muir said it pretty well. The mountains are calling, I must go. I think that's kind of the advice I would give to people in general, is just get out there and just see kind of the world, and, you know, not sit behind a screen and look at it, just go and actually experience it yourself.
Right on. Good words. Yuri?
For filmmakers, for really any artist or any scientist, what we've learned is that we have to understand who we're making it for. We have to study our audience even before we sit down and start making the script or anything like that. And our audience initially, I should say, we didn't know that in the beginning, but once we narrowed down our audience, it was so much easier to make the film, and it was so much easier to give it impact. And in the end, we sort of decided that our audience is small. A couple of folks who make big decisions. Those are the ones we made it for. It just so happened that it's also beautiful and popular, and now 500,000 folks saw it and that kind of thing. But I would say the strategy behind targeting your audience is really important.
Mm-hmm. Good filmmaking advice. And then last words, advice for your fellow human beings.
Get out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's good. That's another theme, a sub-theme of this. Go explore nature. Go check out your surroundings. Well, hey, it's been wonderful talking to you guys. Your films are fantastic. Thank you for making them and help make the conversation about saving our planet. I hope to meet you in person someday.
Thank you for organizing this.
Congratulations, guys. And keep making movies. Stay green.
Thank you.